So this is 7.1, rule number 3, compounds with radicals. So now you will need to be looking not only at your periodic table, but also at your radical sheet. So a radical is basically a polyatomic ion. It's a charged group of elements held together by covalent bonds. So a radical is going to have 2 or more elements in itself, and then you're also going to have other elements in this compound. Looks a little bit crazy, pretty easy to name. Radicals may be placed in parentheses, but they don't have to be. So when you see parentheses, that's a dead giveaway that a radical is present. However, they don't have to be put into parentheses. So binary and prefixes compounds have 2 elements only. Radicals are always going to have 3 or more. So even if there's no parentheses, that's another easy giveaway. Okay, so there's multiple rules for radicals just because it depends on where the radical is. So if you have an element followed by a radical, you say the name of the element and you say the name of the radical from your radical sheet. That's it. You don't change anything. Very simple. You could also have a radical first and then an element. So in this case, you say the name of the radical from the periodic table, from your radical sheet, and then you say the name of the element with the suffix IDE. So you do have to change the second element or the last element's IDE ending to the name. So radical followed by an element, say the name of the radical, say the name of the element with the IDE ending. You never, ever, ever, ever use prefixes with radicals. So ignore the subscripts. You do have to be aware though that some of the radicals do have a prefix in their name, but it's usually bi. But it could be di, like we have dichromate. That's just the name of the radical. Bisulfate, that's just the name of the radical. So don't ever add a prefix. But if you see a prefix on your radical sheet's name, that is correct. I hope that makes sense. Okay, and then the last option, which is pretty rare, 2 radicals together. You just say them in the order that they come in. Say the name of the first radical, say the name of the second radical. So these are pretty easy with the exception of number 2, but it's sort of similar to the binary rule. So once again, you're ignoring subscripts, naming appropriately. So in this case, we have NaC2H3O2. Now, I have it in parentheses, but it does not have to be in parentheses. Be aware of that. So I'm going to say the name of the element, sodium, and then I'm going to look at my radical sheet for C2H3O2. That is acetate. The name of this is sodium acetate. Name of the element, name of the radical. Okay, capital K, capital C, capital N. 3 elements. Even if there weren't parentheses here, I know it has a radical. So K is an element, that's potassium. And then I look at my radical sheet for Cn, that is cyanide. So this element is potassium cyanide. Easy as that. Okay, in this case, I have a radical that has a subscript on the outside. So I have to use parentheses. So I have an element and then a radical. So this is calcium, Ca, and then hydroxide, OH. Okay, this one looks scary, but it's actually very easy. So I've got an element and then a radical. So this is aluminum. And then look at your radical sheet. What is SiO3? You're looking just inside the parentheses. You're not going to find it with the parentheses and then this 3 on the outside. Just look inside the parentheses. Same with this one. You're looking for OH on your radical sheet. So this one is aluminum and then SiO3 silicate. So all of these are examples with an element and then a radical. Let's try a couple different ones. Okay, in this case, I have H2 and then in parentheses O2. It's in parentheses, it is a radical. This is the trickiest one there is. O2 in this case is a radical. It looks like a binary, but I'm telling you it has parentheses. I have to put parentheses around this one. Tricky one. So I have H, hydrogen, And then looking at my radical sheet, what is O2? So this compound is hydrogen peroxide. I would never trick you and give you H2O2 without the parentheses. That would be cruel. Okay, what about this one? Ba3PO42. So Ba is my element. I'm ignoring the extra subscripts. PO4 is my radical. So Ba is barium. PO4 is phosphate. So this is just barium phosphate. I don't care about the 3 and the 2 subscript. Okay, this one doesn't have parentheses. So Ca, and then parentheses technically CO3. And you can always put parentheses around this if you want to. If you weren't sure where the radical was, look at your radical sheet. There is no CHC, so it has to be CO3. So Ca is calcium. CO3 is carbonate. So this is calcium carbonate. What about this one? Element, radical inside the parentheses. Ignore the 2. Sr is strontium, and IO3 is iodate, strontium iodate. Okay, no parentheses, but 3 elements. Tell me this is a radical, contains a radical. If you're not sure where the radical is, look at your radical sheet. Do you see anything that's Na and O? No, you do not. So that means the radical must be OH. So you can draw parentheses around the O and the H if that makes you more comfortable. So I have an element followed by a radical. This is going to be sodium hydroxide. Last but not least, I actually have a radical and then an element. So NH4 is my radical. You can look at your periodic table and figure that out. I'm sorry, your radical sheet and figure that out. S is my element. So in this case, I say the name of the radical. I say the name of the element with the IDE suffix. So this is going to be ammonium, NH4, sulfide. Sulfur became sulfide. So it's pretty common to have an element followed by a radical, whether it's in parentheses or not. You could also have a radical followed by an element, not as common. And then also remember, you can have 2 radicals. So that is the rule for naming compounds containing radicals. Just watch your radical sheet versus the periodic table. And remember, we ignore subscripts. We don't need any type of prefix unless it's in the name given to you on your radical sheet already.